Hey you, yes you, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's get into tonight's true crime case. So don't forget subscribe this channel and turn on notification. Story 1. The Parisian autumn of 2024 arrived with its usual understated elegance, a golden haze settling over the city's Haussmannian facades. For me, a seasoned art authenticator, September promised a fascinating dive into the hidden depths of the art market. My expertise lay in sniffing out forgeries, a skill honed over decades of meticulous examination and an almost preternatural instinct for the genuine versus the fraudulent. This particular September, however, would test more than just my professional acumen. The Gallery Lafayette Beaux-Arts, a prestigious institution tucked away on a quiet street near the Marais, was preparing for a groundbreaking exhibition of rediscovered Impressionist masterpieces. The art world buzzed with anticipation, whispers of a Monet previously thought lost, and a Degas sketch that could rewrite art history. My role was critical, to authenticate every piece before its public unveiling. My arrival at the gallery on the morning of September 10th was met with the crisp scent of fresh paint and old canvas. The air thrummed with a nervous energy, the kind that precedes any major cultural event. Monsieur Dubois, the gallery owner, a man whose passion for art was matched only by his meticulous attention to detail, greeted me with a deferential nod. The security team, a formidable presence of well-drilled professionals, was already in place, their presence a stark reminder of the immense value contained within these walls. The initial days were a blur of intense concentration. I worked methodically, each painting a puzzle to be solved. My tools were simple: a magnifying glass, a UV light, and my years of experience. I scrutinized brushstrokes, examined pigments, and cross-referenced provenance documents. The Monet, a breathtaking depiction of water lilies at dawn, felt right. The Degas, a vibrant study of ballerinas, sang with authenticity. Each day brought a quiet satisfaction, a confirmation of the genuine article. Then came September 15th. The gallery was quiet, save for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant murmur of the city. I was alone in the main exhibition hall, immersed in the intricate details of a Pissarro landscape. The painting, an idyllic scene of a country road, had been a recent acquisition, its history slightly less clear than the others. I leaned closer, my breath fogging the surface slightly, a faint anomaly catching my eye. It was a hairline crack, almost imperceptible, running along the canvas. But it wasn't the crack itself that troubled me. It was its unnatural straightness, almost as if it had been deliberately inflicted. A prickle of unease ran down my spine. My gaze swept the room. No one, the security cameras, high in the corners, offered only a silent, watchful presence. I dismissed it as an accidental scratch, perhaps from a careless handling during transport. Yet, the feeling lingered, an unwelcome shadow in the otherwise brightly lit hall. The following morning, September 16th, brought a new, more unsettling discovery. I was examining a Renoir, a delicate portrait of a young woman, when my fingers brushed against a faint, almost invisible residue near the frame. It was a powdery substance, clinging to the gilt edge. I carefully collected a minuscule sample. My initial thought was dust, but the texture felt different, almost crystalline. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. The next few days were a strange blend of professional obligation and growing apprehension. The crack in the Pissarro, the residue on the Renoir, these small discrepancies began to coalesce into a disturbing pattern. I found myself scrutinizing not just the art, but the environment itself. I observed the security patrols, the cleaning staff, even the delivery personnel. Everyone seemed to move with a purpose, yet an undercurrent of unease rippled beneath the surface of my consciousness. On September 20th, the atmosphere in the gallery shifted dramatically. I arrived to find Monsieur Dubois pacing frantically near the main entrance, his face ashen. A sense of dread washed over me. He explained, his voice tight with barely suppressed panic, that an alarm had been triggered during the night. Not the main security system, but a secondary internal sensor on one of the display cases. Nothing appeared to be missing, but the unsettling incident sent a jolt of fear through the entire establishment. The security team, led by the stoic Jean-Pierre, conducted a thorough sweep, but found no evidence of intrusion. The mystery deepened, a silent, unseen hand at work within the gallery's hallowed halls. My own unease intensified. The small anomalies I had noted now seemed less like isolated incidents and more like pieces of a larger, more sinister puzzle. The morning of September 25th dawned with a heavy rain, mirroring the growing gloom within me. I was re-examining the Renoir, the powdery residue still a nagging question in my mind. Under a stronger magnification, I noticed a faint, almost microscopic shimmer within the residue. It was unlike anything I had seen before. I carefully collected a larger sample, intending to have it analyzed. Just as I sealed the sample, a faint, almost imperceptible sound reached my ears from a distant corridor, a metallic click. My heart pounded. I moved silently, my steps muffled by the plush carpet, towards the sound. The gallery was supposed to be empty, save for myself and the skeleton security crew who were on a rotation. I rounded a corner and stopped dead. The scene before me sent a chill down my spine. A section of the wall behind a large tapestry was slightly ajar. It was a cleverly concealed panel, blending seamlessly with the surrounding architecture. A faint scent of something metallic, almost acrid, hung in the air. My mind raced, piecing together the fragments. The crack in the Pissarro, a possible distraction or a test. The residue on the Renoir, perhaps a trace left behind during a hurried attempt. The tripped alarm, a near miss. And now, the hidden panel suggesting a more elaborate, perhaps even long-term plan. I approached the panel cautiously, my senses heightened. The metallic click I had heard, I realized, was likely the sound of the panel being secured, or perhaps even opened. My hand reached out, my fingers trembling slightly as I pushed the panel further open. Beyond lay not a hidden room, but a narrow, unlit space, clearly not intended for public view. It was a service conduit, a forgotten passage used for maintenance, now repurposed for a more clandestine purpose. The air within was stale, a stark contrast to the gallery's meticulously controlled environment. A faint light emanated from deeper within the passage. I hesitated for a moment, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. My role was authentication, not law enforcement, but a powerful sense of responsibility, of protecting the integrity of the art and the gallery, propelled me forward. I stepped into the narrow passage, the silence of the hidden space enveloping me. The light grew stronger, casting long, distorted shadows on the rough concrete walls. It led to a small, enclosed area, almost a crawl space, at the very heart of the gallery's security infrastructure. There, on the dusty floor, lay a small, specialized toolkit. Tiny, precision instruments, familiar to anyone who worked with delicate mechanisms. And beside it, a series of intricately designed, almost microscopic sensors, clearly not part of the gallery's original security system. They were sophisticated, custom-made, designed to bypass existing safeguards. My gaze settled on a small, dark stain on the concrete. It was almost invisible in the dim light, but my trained eye recognized it immediately. It was a faint smear, unmistakably, of paint. Not just any paint, but a vibrant shade of cerulean blue, a color prominently featured in one of the gallery's most prized possessions, the newly rediscovered Monet. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't about forgery. It was about something far more insidious, a meticulously planned theft. The cracks, the residue, the tripped alarm, they were all part of a sophisticated scheme to either replace the original paintings with perfectly crafted fakes, or to gradually dismantle the gallery's security from within. The cerulean smear, left behind by carelessness or haste, was the final, irrefutable piece of the puzzle. I backed away slowly, my mind reeling. The elegant veneer of the Parisian art world had suddenly peeled away, revealing a dark underbelly of deception and ambition. The exquisite beauty of the art now seemed almost secondary to the chilling reality of the crime that had been unfolding silently and stealthily, right under our noses. The September air, once a gentle caress, now felt heavy with the unspoken truth of a murder not of a person, but of authenticity, of trust, and of the very soul of the art itself. My task had shifted from authentication to uncovering the chilling truth behind the murder in the Paris Art Gallery. The journey into the autumn art season had taken a turn into the unsettling depths of a silent, almost invisible transgression. Story 2. The late Tokyo summer of 2024, a September brimming with its characteristic humidity and the incessant hum of cicadas, found me, a specialist investigator in identity fraud, deep within the labyrinthine digital trails of what appeared to be a sophisticated passport syndicate. My focus for years had been the intricate dance of forged documents, the subtle imperfections that betray a counterfeit, and the digital breadcrumbs left by those who orchestrate such deceptions. This particular case had landed on my desk with an urgency that spoke of a global threat. My arrival at the National Police Agency headquarters in Kasumigaseki was met with the crisp efficiency characteristic of Japanese law enforcement. The air conditioning offered a welcome respite from the oppressive heat outside. Inspector Tanaka, a man of quiet intensity and meticulous habits, greeted me with a solemn nod. He was my primary liaison, his deep understanding of local criminal networks invaluable to my investigation. The secure briefing room, devoid of any external distractions, became my temporary sanctuary. The initial days were a blur of data analysis. Terabytes of intercepted communications, financial transactions, and digital footprints flowed across my screens. The syndicate, codenamed Kage by the authorities, seemed almost spectral in its operations, leaving minimal tangible evidence. Their methods were precise, their network vast. They targeted individuals seeking new identities for illicit purposes, providing them with seemingly genuine Japanese passports. The sheer volume of forged documents suggested a well-oiled machine, operating with unnerving precision. My primary task was to identify the source of the genuine blanks. A syndicate forging passports needed access to the very paper, security features, and printing presses used by official government agencies. This was the linchpin, the ultimate vulnerability in their operation. My experience told me this was not a simple matter of black market purchases. It pointed to an insider. On September 5th, a pattern began to emerge from the digital noise. A series of seemingly innocuous email exchanges between an obscure shipping company in Yokohama and a small, independent printing firm in the heart of Tokyo's traditional print district caught my attention. The language was coded, full of technical jargon that, to an untrained eye, would appear entirely legitimate. But my algorithms flagged anomalies. Unusually large orders for specialized paper, inconsistent shipping manifests, and financial transactions that deviated from typical business practices. I spent the next few days meticulously cross-referencing these anomalies with known data breaches and insider threats. The shipping company, Oceanic Transit, was a mid-sized operation, nothing outwardly suspicious. The printing firm, Kagami Printworks, had a long and respectable history, known for its high-quality work on sensitive documents for various corporations. The discrepancy between their public image and the flagged digital data grew more unsettling. On September 10th, I visited Oceanic Transit's warehouse in Yokohama. The vast complex hummed with activity, forklifts zipping between towering stacks of crates. My cover story was that of an independent auditor investigating a potential discrepancy in customs declarations. While I spoke with their bewildered administrative staff, my gaze swept the warehouse floor. Nothing seemed out of place, yet a nagging feeling persisted, a sense that something was being deliberately obscured. The air was thick with the scent of cardboard and machinery oil, an unremarkable backdrop to a potentially significant deception. The following day, September 11th, I turned my attention to Kagami Printworks. The old building, nestled among traditional Japanese houses and modern apartment blocks, exuded a quiet dignity. The scent of ink and paper permeated the air, a familiar aroma that usually brought a sense of comfort. Here, my approach was more direct, focusing on their security protocols for handling sensitive materials. The owner, a stoic man with ink-stained fingers, spoke proudly of his firm's integrity. He showed me their secure storage facilities, their advanced printing presses, and their strict chain of custody procedures. Everything seemed impeccable. Too impeccable, perhaps. A small detail, however, caught my eye during my tour of the printing presses. One of the high-security machines, used for printing specialized holographic foils, displayed a minuscule, almost imperceptible scratch on its casing. It was an odd blemish on an otherwise perfectly maintained piece of equipment. I filed it away, another small piece of an increasingly complex puzzle. Over the next week, the digital evidence intensified. The coded communications became more frequent, more urgent. The unusual paper orders multiplied. It became clear that Kagami Printworks was indeed producing the blanks, but not for the syndicate directly. They were likely a middleman, a seemingly legitimate front. The question remained, how were the blanks then being transferred to the syndicate, and who within Kagami Printworks was facilitating this? On September 20th, a breakthrough, a seemingly insignificant financial transaction, buried deep within a convoluted web of shell corporations, linked Kagami Printworks to a small private security firm operating out of a nondescript office in Shinjuku. Guardian Shield Solutions. Their public profile was minimal, their services vaguely defined as asset protection. This was the missing link, the conduit between the legitimate printing firm and the shadowy syndicate. My surveillance of Guardian Shield Solutions began discreetly. Their office was unremarkable, their employees few. They operated with an almost invisible presence. On September 24th, my patience was rewarded. A plain white van, unmarked, pulled up to the rear entrance of Kagami Printworks in the dead of night. Two men, their faces obscured by the shadows, meticulously loaded several crates onto the van. The crates were not large, but they were handled with an almost exaggerated care, suggesting fragile contents. My instincts screamed, this was it. The blank passports, or at least the raw materials for them. I followed the van through the winding Tokyo streets, maintaining a safe distance. It led me not to a hidden warehouse or a shadowy hideout, but to a seemingly ordinary apartment building in a quiet residential neighborhood of Setagaya. The van parked in an underground garage. The two men disappeared into the building, carrying the crates. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The apartment building itself was a high-security residence, popular with expatriates and those seeking anonymity. It provided the perfect cover for a discreet operation. The scratch on the printing press, the seemingly innocuous financial transactions, the small security firm, and now the residential drop-off, it all painted a chilling picture of a meticulously crafted operation. On September 28th, with all the evidence meticulously compiled, I presented my findings to Inspector Tanaka. The weight of the impending operation hung heavy in the air. The syndicate's core was exposed, their methods understood. The silent transfer of knowledge, the subtle nods of understanding, confirmed that we were ready. The humid Tokyo air, once a symbol of late summer, now felt charged with the promise of inevitable confrontation. The intricate dance of deception was about to be met with the unyielding force of justice, a testament to the fact that even the most meticulously planned deceptions leave traces for those who know how to look. The passport syndicate was about to meet its end. Story 3. The thin air of Cusco, Peru, in September 2024 held a deceptive tranquility. For me, a forensic epidemiologist specializing in mysterious clusters of illness and death, it carried a chilling weight. I had arrived in the ancient Inca capital not for its breathtaking ruins or vibrant markets, but for a far grimmer purpose, an alarming series of fatalities at a popular backpackers' hostel. My expertise lay in identifying the subtle, often unseen, agents that could fell individuals without obvious cause. My initial briefing at the local police station was brief, punctuated by the weary expressions of the local authorities. 3 young travelers, all seemingly healthy, had died within a week at the Andean Respite Hostel. 2 others were hospitalized in critical condition. The symptoms were vague: severe headaches, nausea, disorientation, followed by rapid respiratory distress. There was no visible trauma, no obvious signs of foul play in the conventional sense. This was a silent killer, and my task was to unmask it. The Andean Respite was a charming but unassuming establishment nestled on a cobblestone street, its colorful facade belying the tragedy unfolding within. The air inside felt heavy, laden with unspoken fear. The staff, visibly shaken, moved with a quiet resignation. My first priority was to secure the premises, ensuring no further contamination or alteration of potential evidence. My days began with meticulous examination of the hostel's environment. I moved through the common areas, the dormitories, the kitchen, and the bathrooms with a methodical precision. I collected air samples, water samples, and swabbed surfaces. Every vent, every drain, every pipe was a potential conduit for the invisible. The police had already conducted an initial sweep, but their focus was on overt criminal activity, not the unseen dangers I sought. The toxicology reports on the deceased were inconclusive. No common poisons, no illicit drugs. This strengthened my suspicion of an environmental agent. My attention shifted to the hostel's infrastructure. Old buildings in Cusco, while picturesque, often harbored hidden secrets, remnants of past construction or repairs. The Andes, with its high altitude and unique geological features, also presented specific environmental considerations. On September 8th, while examining the ventilation system in the basement, a faint, acrid smell caught my attention. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to an untrained nose, easily mistaken for the general mustiness of an old building. But my senses were honed by years of sniffing out the unusual. The scent led me to a small, enclosed utility room, dimly lit and rarely accessed. Inside, I found an aging, poorly maintained boiler system. Its pipes were corroded, and a faint hiss emanated from one of the connections. This immediately raised a red flag. My immediate thought was carbon monoxide. It was a silent, odorless killer, known to cause symptoms mirroring those reported by the victims. But the smell I detected wasn't typical carbon monoxide. It had a sharp, almost metallic tang to it. I installed specialized detectors throughout the hostel, focusing on the dormitories closest to the utility room. The initial readings were low, but consistent, indicating a slow, insidious leak. The problem, however, was the precise composition of the gas. My portable analyzer showed not only carbon monoxide, but also traces of hydrogen sulfide and methane. This mixture pointed to a more complex issue than just a faulty boiler. My investigation then expanded to the building's waste management system. Old plumbing, especially in structures built centuries ago, could conceal significant issues. I requested blueprints of the hostel, a challenging endeavor in Cusco, where historical records were often incomplete. The blueprints, when finally acquired on September 15th, revealed a disturbing detail. An old, decommissioned septic tank directly beneath the utility room, a remnant from a previous building iteration, had never been properly sealed or removed. The combination of the old septic tank and the corroded boiler pipes presented a grim possibility. The septic tank, over decades, could have accumulated anaerobic bacteria, producing a potent cocktail of toxic gases, including hydrogen sulfide and methane. The leaking boiler, instead of simply emitting carbon monoxide, could have been drawing these gases from the unsealed tank into its combustion chamber, then inadvertently dispersing them throughout the hostel's ventilation system. The heat from the boiler could have even amplified the toxicity of these gases. The subtle, acrid smell I detected wasn't just boiler fumes. It was the insidious breath of decay from below, amplified and circulated. The varying levels of illness among the victims could be explained by their proximity to the leaking pipes or the strength of the ventilation in their specific rooms. Those in the dormitories directly above the utility room would have been most exposed. On September 22nd, I returned to the utility room with a specialized gas detection team. We sealed off the area and conducted a more precise analysis. The readings were definitive. High concentrations of hydrogen sulfide and methane, along with carbon monoxide, were emanating from the rusted pipes connected to the boiler and from fissures in the concrete floor that led directly to the old septic tank. The hostel, in essence, was slowly being poisoned by its own forgotten past. The immediate action was to evacuate the hostel and seal off the entire area for remediation. The local authorities, once skeptical, now moved with a renewed sense of urgency. The Andean Respite, once a haven for weary travelers, had become a silent tomb, a testament to the hidden dangers that lurked beneath even the most charming facades. The victims, unknowingly, had inhaled a deadly mixture, a silent chemical assault. My investigation concluded with a somber understanding. The deaths were not due to malicious intent, but a tragic confluence of neglect, aging infrastructure, and the slow, unseen workings of environmental decay. The backpackers' dream in Cusco had ended in a silent, invisible tragedy. The truth, once hidden, was now starkly revealed. A grim reminder of the vigilance required to ensure safety even in the most picturesque of settings. Story 4. The shimmering September heat of Dubai, 2024, usually brought with it an air of opulence and ceaseless activity. For me, a private investigator specializing in high-stakes disappearances, it now carried a distinctly unsettling chill. My arrival in the gleaming metropolis was prompted by the sudden, inexplicable vanishing of Elias Vance, a charismatic British entrepreneur who had been on the cusp of finalizing a multi-million-dollar real estate deal. My work was often a race against time, a descent into the hidden currents beneath the polished surface of wealth and power. My first port of call was Elias's lavish penthouse apartment in downtown Dubai, a gleaming testament to his recent success. The apartment, impeccably maintained, felt eerily empty. The police had conducted their initial sweep, focusing on forced entry and signs of struggle. Their findings were minimal. No broken locks, no overturned furniture, no obvious signs of a fight. It was as if Elias had simply evaporated into the humid night air. My methodology was different. I sought the subtle disruptions, the emotional echoes left behind. I meticulously examined every surface, every digital footprint. Elias's tablet lay charging on his bedside table, his phone conspicuously absent. His passport, still in its drawer, ruled out a hasty departure through official channels. The chilling realization was that this wasn't a runaway. It was a disappearance orchestrated with surgical precision. My initial inquiries led me to Elias's business associates. They were a diverse group, reflecting Dubai's global business landscape. A smooth-talking Emirati developer, a shrewd Russian investor, and a cautious Chinese financier. Each expressed shock and concern, yet beneath the polite veneer, I sensed a simmering tension, an undercurrent of unspoken rivalries inherent in such high-stakes ventures. The real estate deal, a sprawling resort project on the Palm Jumeirah, was colossal, promising immense profits to all involved. On September 5th, I reviewed the security footage from Elias's building. The cameras covered every angle of the lobby, elevators, and parking garage. Elias was last seen entering the elevator on the evening of September 3rd, dressed for a dinner meeting. He was alone. The elevator ascended to his floor and then nothing. He never appeared on any other camera exiting the building or the garage. This confirmed my initial assessment. Elias hadn't left voluntarily. My attention then turned to the elevator itself. A detailed examination of the maintenance logs revealed a recent, unscheduled service visit on September 2nd. The official reason cited was a minor electrical fault. This raised a red flag. Unscheduled maintenance, especially just hours before a disappearance, was too coincidental to ignore. I requested access to the elevator's internal logs, a typically secure and rarely accessed data stream. After navigating through layers of bureaucracy, I finally obtained the information on September 10th. The logs revealed a brief, unusual power fluctuation at the precise time Elias entered the elevator. Crucially, they also showed that the elevator had stopped not on Elias's floor, but on an intermediate, rarely used service level, for a duration of approximately 5 minutes. This was the break I needed. The service level, designed primarily for building maintenance, was typically restricted access, often unmonitored by the main security cameras. It provided a blind spot, a perfect window for a clandestine operation. My next step was to thoroughly investigate the service level. It was a utilitarian space, starkly contrasting with the opulent apartments above. There were service elevators, storage rooms, and access points to the building's infrastructure. The air was thick with the scent of dust and cleaning supplies, On the floor, near a rarely opened service door, I noticed a faint, almost invisible oily residue. It was a unique industrial lubricant, often used on heavy machinery. I collected a sample of the residue. My subsequent analysis confirmed its composition, a specific type of high-performance lubricant used in specialized equipment. This pointed away from casual building maintenance and towards something more substantial. My focus then shifted to the individuals with access to this service level. Beyond the building staff who were thoroughly vetted, who else might have knowledge of or access to this discreet passage? My investigation into the recent elevator maintenance crew became paramount. The records showed a third-party contractor, Alfala Technical Services, had performed the unscheduled work. On September 15th, I visited Alfala Technical Services office, a small, unassuming establishment in a less glamorous part of Dubai. The company appeared legitimate, their records seemingly in order. However, their lead technician for the Elias Vance building job, a man named Rashid, had recently resigned abruptly and left the country. The timing was too suspicious. My investigation then branched into Rashid's digital footprint. It was meticulously erased, a ghost in the machine. Yet, a few subtle anomalies remained. A series of encrypted communications with a single, unknown number, and a significant, untraceable transfer of funds into an offshore account just days before Elias's disappearance. The pattern was clear. Rashid was not merely a technician. He was a key player, a crucial link in the chain. The final piece of the puzzle came from the financial records of the real estate deal itself. While the main transactions were legitimate, a deeper dive into the subsidiary agreements revealed a complex web of shell companies and hidden clauses. One particular clause, almost imperceptible amidst the legal jargon, stipulated an unusually large consulting fee to a previously unknown entity if the deal failed to materialize. This entity was linked, through a series of untraceable transactions, to the same offshore account that received funds from Rashid. The pieces began to coalesce into a chilling narrative. Elias Vance, on the verge of closing a massive deal, had become an obstacle. Someone, perhaps a disgruntled partner or a rival seeking to scuttle the deal and profit from its collapse, had orchestrated his removal. The elevator, the service level, the specialized lubricant, the seemingly routine maintenance, and the vanishing technician, all were part of an elaborate plan. On September 25th, I presented my findings to Inspector Omar, the lead detective on the case. My detailed report laid out the precise mechanism of the kidnapping. Elias had been intercepted on the service level, incapacitated, and then likely transported out of the building through the service exit, perhaps in a large, sealed maintenance container, utilizing the cover of the Alfala Technical Services van, which would have had legitimate access. The industrial lubricant was likely used on a trolley or hoist to move him discreetly. The motive was clear: financial gain, a strategic removal to manipulate the real estate deal for personal profit. Elias Vance was not held for ransom. He was removed as a strategic impediment. The silent, meticulous planning, the layers of legitimate fronts, and the precise execution pointed to a formidable opponent, a mind as sharp as Dubai's cutting-edge architecture. The hunt for Elias Vance now transformed into a global pursuit, focusing on the offshore account and the elusive Rashid. The shimmering city of Dubai, once a symbol of opportunity, now revealed its darker side, a place where ambition could lead to unseen depths of deception. The Kidnapped in Dubai case was no longer a simple disappearance. It was a complex web of corporate intrigue, a chilling testament to the lengths some would go for power and wealth, meticulously planned and executed in the heart of a city that rarely sleeps. The September sun continued to beat down, but its warmth could no longer mask the cold precision of the crime. Story 5. The early September chill in Toronto, 2024, usually carried the invigorating scent of autumn leaves and the buzz of returning students. For me, a seasoned university security consultant specializing in digital forensics and academic integrity, it now hummed with a different, more unsettling energy. I had been called in by the University of Toronto's administration to investigate a growing disquiet surrounding the upcoming student council elections. Whispers of irregularities, strange glitches in the online voting system, and an almost palpable tension among the candidates had reached the highest levels of the university. My role was to peel back the layers of digital deception and uncover the truth behind what threatened to become a campus election conspiracy. My first meeting was with Dean Thompson, a man whose normally composed demeanor was frayed with concern. He laid out the known facts. Several student complaints about receiving unexpected confirmation emails for votes they hadn't cast, intermittent outages of the election portal at critical times, and an unusual surge in voter registration from seemingly dormant student accounts. The stakes were surprisingly high for a student election. The incoming council held significant power over student funds, campus initiatives, and even had a voice in university policy decisions. My initial approach involved a comprehensive audit of the online voting system. This bespoke platform, developed in-house, was supposed to be robust and secure. I delved into server logs, firewall activity, and user authentication protocols. The digital landscape was vast, a labyrinth of interconnected data points. The task was akin to finding a single fabricated whisper in a bustling auditorium. On September 5th, a subtle anomaly emerged. While most system errors were random or easily explained, a series of precisely timed, very short-duration outages occurred, always coinciding with peak voting hours. These weren't system crashes. They were almost surgical disconnections, lasting just long enough to frustrate legitimate voters but too brief to trigger major alarms. The perpetrator was not trying to break the system. They were manipulating its flow. My attention then shifted to the voter registration database. The university had prided itself on its transparent and accessible student records. I began cross-referencing the recent influx of new registrations with existing student directories. On September 10th, a pattern solidified. A significant number of the suspicious new registrations were linked to student identification numbers that had been inactive for years, belonging to alumni who had long since graduated or transferred. Their names, however, were strikingly similar to current students, with minor, almost imperceptible alterations, a middle initial added, a hyphen removed. This was not a simple hack. It was an act of meticulous data fabrication. The next step was to trace the origin of these fabricated accounts. The IP addresses associated with their creation led me not to external, unknown sources, but to specific campus network segments. This indicated an insider operation, someone with privileged access to the university's internal network. The net was beginning to close. On September 15th, I focused my investigation on the Student Council campaign offices. These were bustling hubs of activity, filled with posters, volunteers, and the nervous energy of ambitious young leaders. There were 3 main slates of candidates, each vying for power. My approach was subtle. I observed, I listened, and I looked for digital footprints. Public Wi-Fi networks within these offices, shared drives, and even discarded USB sticks could hold invaluable clues. A seemingly innocuous detail from one of the campaign offices caught my eye. The Progressive Student Alliance campaign office, led by a charismatic but intensely competitive student named Maya Sharma, had an unusually high number of personal devices connected to their office Wi-Fi, even late into the night. While not inherently suspicious, the sheer volume, combined with the earlier digital anomalies, piqued my interest. My digital forensics work then involved monitoring network traffic patterns around these specific campus locations. On September 20th, the pieces started to fit. During the periods of the surgical disconnections on the election portal, I observed a surge in encrypted data transfers originating from the Progressive Student Alliance campaign offices network. The destination of these transfers was obfuscated, routed through multiple proxies, but the timing was too precise to be coincidental. Further deep dives into the encrypted data, a painstaking process of decryption and analysis, began to reveal their contents. These weren't simply campaign strategies. They were coded instructions, algorithmic commands, and lists of the fabricated student IDs. The glitches in the system, the phantom votes, and the inflated voter registrations were not random errors. They were the precise actions of an automated script designed to subtly skew the election results. The masterstroke of the conspiracy was its subtlety. The aim wasn't to crash the system or create obvious red flags, which would instantly trigger a full-scale investigation. Instead, the goal was to introduce just enough digital noise, just enough fabricated votes to nudge the election outcomes in a specific direction without drawing immediate suspicion. The perpetrators relied on the chaotic nature of a busy campus election and the trust placed in the online voting system. On September 25th, my investigation led me to the unexpected discovery of a single, powerful remote access tool embedded deep within the campaign office's primary server. This tool allowed for direct manipulation of specific network parameters and, crucially, provided a backdoor into the university's less secure student database. It was the digital weapon used to create the fake accounts and deploy the voting scripts. The final days of September were a whirlwind of meticulous documentation. My report, meticulously detailing every digital footprint, every anomaly, every line of malicious code, provided irrefutable evidence. The IP addresses, the timestamps, the data payloads, all pointed unequivocally to the Progressive Student Alliance's campaign. The campus election conspiracy was not the work of an external hacking group. It was an internal act of digital manipulation, driven by ambition and a blatant disregard for fair process. On September 29th, I presented my findings to Dean Thompson and a committee of university officials. The silence in the room was deafening as they absorbed the detailed account of the sophisticated digital plot. The discovery sent shockwaves through the university community. The trust in the electoral process, once a cornerstone of campus democracy, had been violated. The investigation confirmed a deep-seated ethical breach, a calculated attempt to subvert the democratic process for personal gain. The Toronto autumn, once promising a new academic year, now symbolized a stark lesson in the hidden vulnerabilities of even seemingly secure systems and the pervasive reach of ambition. The campus election conspiracy was brought to light, not by dramatic confrontation, but by the patient unraveling of digital threads, revealing a silent, calculated deception. Story 6. The perpetual gray skies of Rotterdam in September 2024 often mirrored the grim nature of my work as a forensic investigator specializing in clandestine human trafficking. The vast, sprawling port, a pulsating artery of global trade, was also a shadow realm where desperate journeys often ended in tragedy. My current assignment was a cold case, yet one with a chillingly fresh discovery: 3 bodies found within a sealed shipping container. The initial police reports were sparse, focusing on cause of death, asphyxiation, and the absence of any immediate identifying documents. My role was to provide the who and the how, to piece together the human story behind the anonymous demise. My first visit to the port's forensic hangar, where the container had been moved, was a sensory assault. The sterile air conditioning fought a losing battle against the lingering smell of decay and the metallic tang of the container itself. The sheer size of the metallic box was daunting, a stark symbol of its journey across oceans. Inside, the scene was meticulously documented, photographed, and scanned, but the human element remained elusive. 3 adult males, their faces etched with the final moments of their struggle, lay silent witnesses to a desperate voyage. My initial examination focused on the container itself. It was a standard 40-foot unit, marked with a generic shipping company logo. No obvious signs of forced entry. The seal, though broken for forensic access, appeared to have been intact upon arrival. This suggested either an inside job at the point of origin or a sophisticated method of sealing from within. The interior was barren, save for a few discarded plastic water bottles and some crumpled, foreign-language newspapers. The temperature inside the container, based on internal sensors, had fluctuated wildly, reaching extreme highs during transit, a grim confirmation of the unbearable conditions the victims had endured. On September 5th, I began a meticulous search for any personal effects. The victims' clothing was threadbare, their pockets empty. However, tucked into the sole of one man's worn shoe, I discovered a small, intricately folded piece of fabric. Unfurling it revealed a hand-stitched symbol, unfamiliar to me but clearly significant. It was a fragment of identity, a desperate attempt to leave a mark. My research into the symbol led me down a rabbit hole of regional textiles and tribal markings. It pointed towards a remote, impoverished region in Southeast Asia, known for its intricate weaving traditions and, tragically, for being a source of human trafficking. The symbol, I eventually discovered, was a traditional motif from a specific minority group, often used for identifying family lineage. This was a crucial breakthrough, providing a potential origin for the victims. The next phase of my investigation involved tracing the container's journey. Shipping manifests, cargo declarations, and port logs became my primary tools. The container had originated from a smaller, less regulated port in Southeast Asia, making several transshipment stops before its final destination in Rotterdam. The declared cargo was textiles and handicrafts, a common cover for illicit shipments. The sheer volume of containers passing through these ports made individual scrutiny a monumental task. On September 12th, a more detailed analysis of the container's internal surface yielded another clue. Faint, almost invisible scuff marks on the interior walls suggested a struggle, or perhaps repeated movement in confined conditions. More importantly, near the ceiling, I found a minute, almost microscopic, metallic fragment embedded in a scratch. It was a tiny piece of aluminum, unlike any material commonly found in standard shipping containers. Forensic analysis of the metallic fragment revealed its unique composition, a specialized alloy often used in industrial ventilation systems or, intriguingly, in modified vehicle chassis for enhanced thermal regulation. This was a significant deviation from the norm. Why would such a fragment be inside a standard shipping container? My theory began to solidify. The container had been modified. The aluminum fragment suggested a deliberate, albeit crude, attempt to create a ventilation system, perhaps a temporary one, from within. This indicated that the victims or their handlers had anticipated a long journey and attempted to mitigate the suffocation, at least initially. This also pointed towards a degree of planning and preparation that went beyond a simple, desperate stowaway attempt. On September 18th, I received reports from Interpol of a recent crackdown on a human trafficking ring operating out of the very region in Southeast Asia indicated by the fabric symbol. This syndicate specialized in transporting individuals through elaborate, often deadly, routes across Asia and Europe. Their methods included using modified cargo containers, equipped with temporary, concealed ventilation systems to prolong the journey, a chilling echo of the metallic fragment I had found. My investigation then focused on the specific shipping company whose logo was on the container, Global Freight Solutions. While appearing legitimate, a deeper dive into their records, facilitated by international law enforcement cooperation, revealed a pattern of irregularities. Unusually high volumes of textile and handicraft shipments from the suspect region, and a series of seemingly legitimate, but ultimately untraceable, payments to shell corporations in various tax havens. On September 24th, I managed to obtain satellite tracking data for the specific container. It showed a period of inexplicable downtime, a several-day delay at an intermediate port in the Middle East. During this delay, the container had been moved to an isolated section of the port, away from typical cargo handling areas. This was the window. This was where the victims or additional victims could have been loaded into the container, or perhaps where the modification was performed. The lack of surveillance in that isolated area suggested a deliberate choice by the perpetrators. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source: a faint, almost invisible fingerprint on one of the discarded water bottles, retrieved and processed with advanced techniques. It belonged to a known associate of the recently busted human trafficking syndicate, an individual who had previously managed logistics for their operations. This was the definitive link, connecting the bodies in the container directly to the sophisticated criminal network. On September 29th, my comprehensive report was submitted to the Dutch authorities. The bodies in the container case was no longer an isolated tragedy, but a chilling testament to the ruthlessness of a global trafficking operation. The victims, identified through the small fabric symbol and the patterns of the syndicate, were no longer anonymous. Their silent journey from a remote village to a Rotterdam port had ended in a tragic testament to human desperation and criminal enterprise. The metallic fragment, the delayed transit, the subtle fingerprints, each seemingly insignificant detail had, when pieced together, painted a stark picture of a horrifying reality. The vast, impersonal landscape of global shipping had become a silent witness to a profoundly human tragedy, a chilling reminder that even in the heart of bustling commerce, unseen suffering could unfold. Story 7. The crisp September air of Oslo, 2024, usually hummed with a quiet efficiency, a sense of order inherent in its Scandinavian design. For me, a specialist in high-end security and artifact recovery, it now carried the faint metallic tang of a meticulously planned crime. I had arrived in the Norwegian capital at the urgent summons of the National Museum, a venerable institution that had suffered a breathtaking loss. A significant portion of its newly acquired collection of Viking gold and priceless medieval artifacts had vanished overnight. My expertise lay not in catching perpetrators, but in dissecting the anatomy of a breach, understanding how the impossible was made possible. My initial walkthrough of the museum on the morning of September 3rd was a masterclass in controlled chaos. Police forensics teams moved with methodical precision, documenting every surface. The museum director, a woman of formidable intellect now visibly shaken, spoke in hushed tones, her voice strained. The theft was audacious. The secured exhibit hall, a fortress of reinforced steel and cutting-edge alarm systems, showed no signs of forced entry. The security footage, when reviewed, offered only perplexing glimpses. A brief, almost imperceptible flicker in the cameras during the early hours of the morning, followed by the appearance of empty pedestals. It was as if the artifacts had simply dematerialized. My immediate focus was the museum's elaborate security infrastructure. I delved into blueprints, alarm logs, and surveillance data. The building was a labyrinth of sensors, pressure plates, laser grids, and motion detectors. It was designed to be impregnable, yet it had been breached. The absence of forced entry was the most perplexing aspect. It suggested an intimate knowledge of the museum's inner workings, perhaps even an inside connection. On September 5th, I began a microscopic examination of the exhibit hall. The air was still, heavy with the scent of ozone from the deactivated alarm system. I scrutinized every inch of the display cases, the walls, the floor. My fingers traced the seamless edges of reinforced glass, feeling for any imperfections. The Viking gold, gleaming replicas now filling the empty spaces, mocked the true treasures that were gone. A tiny, almost imperceptible smudge on the underside of a display plinth caught my eye. It was a faint, iridescent sheen, almost like a residue. I carefully collected a sample. It was unlike any standard cleaning product or dust. It had a faint chemical odor, almost like a specialized adhesive or a solvent. My initial hypothesis centered on a sophisticated jamming device, something that could momentarily disrupt the electronic systems. But the museum's defenses were designed to withstand such attacks, with redundant systems and shielded wiring. The flicker on the cameras was too precise, too limited in duration to be a random signal jam. On September 10th, the chemical analysis of the smudge yielded a fascinating result. It was a unique compound of polymers and microscopic metallic particles. This formulation was highly specialized, typically used in stealth technology or in certain types of electromagnetic shielding. This was no ordinary adhesive. This was a custom-made compound, designed for a specific purpose. My attention then shifted to the museum's access logs. Every employee, every contractor, every visitor was meticulously recorded. I cross-referenced these logs with the times of the security flickers and the specific locations of the affected cameras. A pattern emerged. A series of brief, authorized accesses to the museum's electrical and HVAC rooms, occurring at odd hours in the weeks leading up to the heist. These were logged as routine maintenance. On September 15th, I investigated the maintenance in question. The records pointed to a little-known, independent contractor, Nordic System Solutions, hired for a one-time audit of the museum's climate control system. Their public profile was minimal, their services vaguely defined. This was another red flag. Small, unknown contractors often served as fronts for more clandestine operations. My visit to Nordic Systems Solutions' modest office in a quiet industrial district yielded little. The premises were clean, functional, but almost entirely empty. The owner, a man named Eric Jensen, was amiable but evasive, his answers vague concerning his recent activities. He presented legitimate-looking invoices and work orders, but the meticulous nature of my investigation was not easily deterred. My forensic examination of the museum's electrical wiring, specifically in the areas where the camera flickers occurred, revealed a subtle modification. A series of tiny, almost invisible induction coils had been carefully integrated into the existing wiring. These were not part of the museum's original design. They were meticulously placed, designed to create localized electromagnetic pulses, precisely timed to disrupt specific camera feeds and sensor arrays, creating the flicker I had observed. The unique polymer compound I found on the plinth was likely a residual trace from the installation of these coils, or from a tool used in the process. On September 22nd, the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The access logs for the exhibit hall itself were meticulously clean. No unauthorized entry, but the museum's internal elevator system had a rarely used service shaft, typically reserved for large-scale art installations or emergency maintenance. This shaft connected directly to the underground delivery bay, a secluded area of the museum, largely unmonitored at night. The system had a manual override, a hidden panel known only to a select few high-level staff and, critically, to external contractors involved in complex system audits. My analysis of the maintenance conducted by Nordic System Solutions, particularly their work on the HVAC system, revealed that they had deliberately gained access to this service shaft and, more crucially, had identified and mapped the location of the manual override panel. The electromagnetic pulses created by the integrated coils were not meant to disable the entire system. They were designed to create brief, targeted blind spots, allowing the perpetrators to bypass the alarms on the service shaft and the exhibit hall door for precisely the time needed. The luxury heist was not a brute force attack. It was an act of extreme precision and intimate knowledge. The thieves had infiltrated the museum's systems not through hacking, but through physical stealth and meticulous pre-planning under the guise of legitimate work. They knew the museum's vulnerabilities, its blind spots, and the nuances of its security protocols. The Nordic System Solutions was a facade, a Trojan horse. Eric Jensen was not merely a contractor. He was the orchestrator, or at least a crucial operative in this sophisticated scheme. On September 28th, I delivered my comprehensive report to the police and the museum director. The findings were stark. The heist was an inside job, executed with a level of sophistication that bordered on artistry. The specific metallic particles in the polymer compound, traced to a specialized manufacturer in a remote part of Eastern Europe, pointed towards a potential international network. The luxury heist in Oslo was not just a theft. It was a deeply unsettling act of betrayal of trust, meticulously planned and executed by individuals who understood the museum's secrets better than its own custodians. The quiet efficiency of Oslo had been disturbed, not by a violent act, but by a chilling display of cunning and technical prowess, leaving behind only the cold emptiness of stolen beauty. The September air, once crisp and clean, now carried the indelible stain of a perfect crime, perfectly dissected. Story 8. The oppressive September humidity of Sao Paulo, 2024, usually brought with it the frenetic energy of a city perpetually in motion. For me, a medical fraud investigator with a background in public health, it now felt heavy with a distinct, unsettling silence. My arrival in the sprawling Brazilian metropolis was prompted by a series of anonymous tips, whispers of unusual activity, at a seemingly unremarkable private clinic nestled in a quiet, upscale neighborhood. The Harmonia Health Clinic presented itself as a boutique wellness center, offering a range of elective procedures. But the volume of anecdotal complaints, unexplained complications, disproportionately high fees, and a chilling lack of transparency had reached a critical mass, signaling a deeper, more sinister pattern. My expertise lay in dissecting medical records, unmasking deceptive practices, and identifying harm that lay hidden beneath a veneer of legitimacy. My first visit to Harmonia Health Clinic on September 3rd was a reconnaissance mission. The clinic facade was modern and sterile, its reception area gleaming with polished surfaces and minimalist decor. The staff were impeccably polite, almost excessively so. The air was thick with the faint, cloying scent of antiseptic and expensive air freshener. I presented myself as a prospective client seeking information about their holistic rejuvenation programs. While I feigned interest in their brochures, my senses were acutely attuned to subtle discrepancies. The waiting room was unusually quiet for a clinic of its purported popularity, and the few patients I observed seemed unusually subdued, almost withdrawn. My investigation began with the clinic's digital footprint. Their website was slick, professional, brimming with glowing testimonials and vague descriptions of their advanced treatments. But a deeper dive into online forums and consumer complaint sites revealed a different story. A growing chorus of individuals describing similar unsettling experiences. Many reported feeling disoriented or excessively drowsy during or after their appointments, with vivid gaps in their memory regarding the specifics of their procedures. The common thread was a sense of profound confusion and a reluctance to question the clinic's authority. On September 8th, I began the meticulous process of acquiring and analyzing the clinic's public medical records. Brazilian law, while affording patient privacy, allowed for aggregated, anonymized data to be accessed for public health concerns. This was my entry point. The sheer volume of procedures, particularly elective aesthetic ones, performed at Harmonia Health Clinic seemed disproportionately high for a facility of its size. More concerning was the recurring use of certain specialized medications, often sedatives or amnestic agents, at doses that appeared unusually high for outpatient procedures. My attention then shifted to the financial records. The clinic's billing practices were complex, involving multiple layers of charges and often opaque breakdowns of services. Patients frequently complained of exorbitant final bills, far exceeding initial estimates, often without clear justification. On September 15th, a pattern emerged. A recurring charge for a specific, expensive diagnostic test, one that was rarely necessary for the types of elective procedures the clinic purportedly specialized in. This test, when analyzed, was consistently linked to the use of powerful neuroimaging equipment. The presence of such advanced and expensive equipment in a relatively small wellness clinic, especially for elective cosmetic procedures, struck me as a significant anomaly. It hinted at capabilities far beyond what was publicly advertised. My suspicion deepened. This wasn't just a matter of medical malpractice or overcharging. Something far more insidious was at play. On September 20th, I visited the building's maintenance staff under the guise of an air quality inspector. The building was old, with a complex ventilation system. I noticed a discreetly placed, heavy-duty electrical conduit leading from a lesser-used service elevator directly to a section of the clinic not accessible from the main patient areas. This area, according to the blueprints, was designated as storage. The conduit size indicated it was designed for powerful, high-energy equipment, far beyond typical clinic needs. Later that same day, I managed to gain temporary, surreptitious access to this storage area. The air within was noticeably cooler, regulated by a dedicated air conditioning unit. The space was not for storage. It housed not medical supplies, but a sophisticated, custom-built neuroimaging suite. This was no ordinary MRI or CT scanner. Its configuration and the highly specialized computing equipment suggested a research-grade facility, designed for complex brain activity mapping and manipulation. The smell of ozone, often associated with high-voltage electronics, was distinct. The purpose of this hidden lab, combined with the excessive sedative use and the memory gaps reported by patients, coalesced into a chilling hypothesis. The dark clinic was not merely overcharging for cosmetic procedures. It was using these elective surgeries as a cover to access patients under sedation, then subjecting them to highly specialized neuroimaging and potentially cognitive manipulation. The unnecessary diagnostic test fees were likely covering the cost of operating this clandestine lab. The excessive sedation ensured compliance and amnesia. On September 25th, my analysis of the medical records of patients who reported memory gaps became more focused. I noticed a subtle, yet consistent, pattern in their brainwave activity reports, often included in the expensive diagnostic tests, showing distinct abnormalities in the temporal lobe, consistent with targeted, repeated interference. This was not natural. This was induced. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. A former junior staff member, whose online complaints were particularly detailed, had inadvertently mentioned a seemingly innocuous detail: a specific, coded musical chime that would play intermittently in the treatment rooms, seemingly part of the clinic's relaxation therapy. My research into psychoacoustics and subliminal messaging revealed that certain frequency patterns could be used to induce specific cognitive states or enhance suggestibility, especially when combined with sedative agents. The relaxation therapy was a cover for a more sinister form of conditioning. On September 29th, I presented my findings to the federal authorities in Sao Paulo. The evidence was overwhelming. A highly organized scheme operating under the guise of medical wellness, exploiting vulnerable patients for unknown, but clearly unethical and potentially illegal purposes. The dark clinic in Sao Paulo was not merely committing fraud. It was engaged in a chilling form of psychological manipulation, turning elective procedures into opportunities for covert, non-consensual cognitive experimentation. The September heat of Sao Paulo, once vibrant and bustling, now felt like a heavy blanket, concealing a disturbing undercurrent of exploitation, a silent crime unfolding within the polished walls of a seemingly legitimate medical facility. My investigation had peeled back the layers of deception, revealing a truth far darker than mere financial malfeasance, a chilling testament to the unseen dangers lurking beneath the surface of urban life. Story 9. The early September chill in Warsaw, 2024, usually carried the crisp scent of autumn and the echoes of a vibrant, resilient city. For me, a digital forensic investigator specializing in online extremism and cybercrime, it now resonated with a chilling, almost unbearable silence. I had arrived in the Polish capital at the urgent request of the national police, responding to a horrifying incident that had plunged the nation into shock. A live-streamed act of violence. The perpetrator, a young man identified only as Spectre_X by his online handle, had filmed himself entering a popular public square, engaging in a calculated act that resulted in harm, and then vanishing into the urban labyrinth. My task was to dissect the digital ghost he left behind, to understand the motivations, the planning, and the network that enabled such a heinous display. My first hours at the National Police Cybercrime Unit were a blur of technical data. Terabytes of raw footage, social media posts, and encrypted communications flooded my screens. The live stream itself was a harrowing piece of evidence, but my focus wasn't on the visual spectacle of the event. It was on the metadata, the digital breadcrumbs, the network traffic that preceded, accompanied, and followed the live broadcast. The perpetrator, Spectre_X, had been chillingly meticulous in obscuring his identity, using multiple layers of VPNs, anonymizing proxies, and burner accounts. Yet, no digital ghost is truly untraceable. On September 5th, I began my deep dive into Spectre_X's online presence. His public-facing persona was carefully curated. A disaffected, disillusioned young man railing against societal injustices on niche online forums. But beneath this superficial layer lay a darker current. He frequented encrypted chat rooms and private, invitation-only channels dedicated to extreme ideologies. My algorithms, designed to detect subtle linguistic patterns and behavioral shifts, flagged consistent engagement with a particular manifesto, a sprawling, pseudoscientific text promoting a radical worldview. My analysis of the live stream itself, specifically the technical aspects, revealed subtle clues. The video quality, the frame rate, and the audio synchronization hinted at a specific model of high-end camera, not commonly used by casual streamers. More importantly, the precise GPS coordinates embedded in the raw video file were slightly off from the actual public square, a deliberate attempt to mislead, but also a digital fingerprint. This indicated a pre-planned vantage point, a testing ground, a deliberate act of misdirection. On September 10th, I focused on the funding. How did Spectre_X acquire the specialized equipment and potentially the means to execute his plan? My financial forensics team, working in parallel, traced a series of small, untraceable cryptocurrency donations flowing into a wallet associated with Spectre_X. These donations, while individually small, cumulatively amounted to a significant sum. The pattern of these donations suggested a network of supporters, not just random sympathizers. My investigation then expanded to the online forum where Spectre_X had been most active. It was a dark corner of the internet, a breeding ground for radical ideas. I used advanced linguistic analysis to identify other users who echoed his sentiments, those who egged him on, and those who showed an unusual interest in the technical details of his proposed project. On September 15th, a particularly disturbing pattern emerged. A handful of users, communicating in highly cryptic language, consistently offered technical advice to Spectre_X, disguised as general discussions about online streaming or hardware specifications. This wasn't merely encouragement, it was operational guidance. A breakthrough occurred on September 20th. One of the IP addresses associated with these technical advisors, though heavily masked, briefly leaked a partial, unencrypted connection during a fleeting network instability. This momentary slip, a single, flickering digital spark, allowed me to pinpoint a general geographical location, a specific district in a neighboring European country, known for its lax cybercrime enforcement. This was the first tangible link to an external network, suggesting the live stream shooting was not an isolated act of a lone extremist, but part of a larger, coordinated effort. My attention then shifted back to the public square where the incident took place. The misleading GPS coordinates in the video, initially thought to be a simple obfuscation, now seemed more significant. I overlaid the video with high-resolution satellite imagery of the square. The exact position where Spectre_X had recorded himself indicated a very specific sightline, one that optimized the performance for a chilling narrative. It also coincided with a temporary construction hoarding, erected for a public works project, providing a perfect, concealed vantage point. This indicated meticulous, on-the-ground reconnaissance. Further investigation into the construction project revealed another crucial detail. The temporary hoarding had been erected by a small, unknown local construction firm, Solid Foundations Limited, that had no prior contracts with the city of Warsaw. Their involvement in a project of this scale was unusual. My background checks on Solid Foundations Limited revealed a pattern of unusually quick formation, a lack of established financial history, and a sudden, highly profitable contract with the city. This was a shell company, a temporary cover for a specific sinister purpose. On September 25th, I uncovered the final, chilling piece of the puzzle. The online technical advisor, whose IP address had briefly leaked, was linked, through a series of encrypted communication logs, to the registered director of Solid Foundations Limited. This individual had a long, albeit shadowy, history of involvement in online radical movements and had previously been investigated for propagating extremist propaganda. The live stream shooting was not a spontaneous outburst. It was the culmination of a meticulously planned operation, orchestrated by a network of ideologically driven individuals who provided the resources, the technical guidance, and the cover for Spectre_X's horrific act. My report, delivered to the Polish National Police on September 29th, laid bare the intricate web of connections. The live stream shooting was a performative act designed for maximum online impact, a chilling propaganda piece intended to inspire and radicalize. The perpetrator, Spectre_X, was a willing instrument, but the true masterminds were the hidden network, operating across borders, utilizing legitimate fronts and sophisticated digital tools to further their extremist agenda. The September chill in Warsaw now felt like a cold, stark reality. The digital world, for all its connectivity, harbored unseen dangers, where real-world violence could be planned, facilitated, and broadcast for a global audience. The investigation into the live stream shooting had peeled back the layers of a digital deception, revealing a truth far more disturbing than a lone act of madness, a chilling testament to the unseen forces shaping the darker corners of the internet. Story 10. The Bavarian autumn of September 2024, usually a season of Oktoberfest festivities and crisp mountain air in Munich, held a distinct chill for me, a medical regulatory investigator specializing in rogue practitioners. My arrival in the picturesque German city was prompted by a disturbing anomaly, a sudden, unexplained surge in severe post-operative complications originating from a seemingly reputable private clinic. The Edelweiss Clinic, nestled discreetly in a leafy suburb, presented itself as an exclusive facility offering specialized, cutting-edge surgical procedures, particularly in aesthetic and reconstructive fields. Yet, the pattern of patient harm, veiled in medical jargon and hushed complaints, had reached a point where it could no longer be ignored. My expertise lay in dissecting complex medical records, unmasking fraudulent claims, and identifying harm caused by incompetence or, more insidiously, by deliberate deception. My initial approach was subtle: a clandestine audit of the clinic's publicly accessible information and a discreet review of anonymized patient data. The Edelweiss Clinic's online presence was impeccable, a sophisticated website showcasing immaculate facilities, glowing testimonials, and a team of seemingly highly qualified surgeons. Dr. Klaus Richter, the clinic's charismatic lead surgeon, was prominently featured, lauded for his innovative techniques and extensive experience. But beneath this polished veneer, inconsistencies began to surface. On September 5th, my analysis of the aggregated patient complication rates revealed a significant deviation from national averages for the types of procedures performed at Edelweiss. Infections were unusually high, healing times protracted, and in several cases, patients required subsequent corrective surgeries at other reputable hospitals. This wasn't merely a string of bad luck. It indicated a systemic problem. My attention then shifted to Dr. Richter's professional credentials. His online biography was impressive, listing numerous prestigious universities, international fellowships, and extensive publications. However, a deeper dive into his educational history, cross-referencing with institutional records, began to reveal unsettling discrepancies. Some of the listed dates of attendance didn't align, and certain degrees couldn't be definitively verified through official channels. The meticulously crafted facade began to crack. On September 10th, I visited the Edelweiss Clinic under the guise of an observer from a professional medical accreditation body. The clinic itself was undeniably luxurious. State-of-the-art operating theaters, serene recovery rooms, and an air of hushed efficiency. Dr. Richter, in person, was charming and confident, exuding an aura of competence that was almost disarming. He spoke eloquently about his innovative techniques, using complex medical terminology with fluid ease. Yet, during our brief observation of a surgical preparation, I noticed a subtle hesitation in his movements, a flicker of uncertainty in his otherwise steady hands as he handled surgical instruments. It was almost imperceptible, but my trained eye detected a lack of the ingrained, fluid precision that marks a truly seasoned surgeon. My investigation then moved to the clinic's supply chain. Highly specialized surgical procedures require equally specialized equipment and pharmaceutical supplies. I meticulously audited their procurement records. On September 15th, I uncovered a troubling pattern. The clinic frequently ordered certain specialized surgical instruments and medications in unusually small quantities, often through a network of smaller, less regulated suppliers, rather than directly from major, reputable medical distributors. This suggested either an attempt to cut costs or, more likely, a desire to avoid the scrutiny associated with larger, traceable transactions. The inconsistencies in Dr. Richter's credentials, combined with the alarming patient outcomes and the unusual supply chain, began to coalesce into a disturbing hypothesis. Dr. Klaus Richter was not who he claimed to be. On September 20th, I focused on the specific medical instruments that were ordered in unusual ways. Some were highly technical, requiring specialized training to operate. Others were basic surgical tools, but the quantities were strangely low. This suggested a preference for performing certain parts of procedures, while perhaps delegating or avoiding others, or perhaps even a limited skill set. My breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A former administrative assistant from Edelweiss Clinic, who had left due to ethical concerns, had contacted the medical board anonymously months prior, though her report had been dismissed as unsubstantiated at the time. Her detailed, although unverified, account mentioned a strange ritual. Dr. Richter would always insist on being alone in the operating room during the most critical phases of complex surgeries, even often dismissing fully qualified surgical assistants for brief periods. This was highly irregular and deviated significantly from standard medical protocols. On September 25th, I secured access to the clinic's internal surgical CCTV footage, citing a routine equipment audit. The footage, compressed and seemingly innocuous, revealed a chilling pattern during the critical phases of procedures. During those moments when Dr. Richter dismissed his assistants, the camera feed would momentarily glitch, or a temporary obstruction, like a strategically placed light stand, would obscure the operating table. The durations were short, seemingly accidental, but consistently timed with the most intricate parts of the surgery. By meticulously synchronizing these glitches with the specific types of complications reported by patients, the grim truth emerged. During those obscured moments, it was highly probable that Dr. Richter was either struggling with the procedure, attempting techniques beyond his actual capability, or, most chillingly, relying on some form of external assistance or unconventional methods. The iridescent smudge found on the plinth was no longer just an anomaly. It hinted at materials or tools used to either create the brief visual obstruction or perhaps even a quick, crude attempt to clean up a mistake. The final piece of the puzzle came from an international medical database. A real Dr. Klaus Richter existed, a highly respected surgeon in a different country, known for his pioneering work in a field entirely unrelated to the one practiced at Edelweiss Clinic. The man operating in Munich was an imposter, a ghost, who had meticulously stolen the identity and credentials of a genuine expert. His expertise was a carefully constructed fabrication, his surgical prowess a perilous illusion. On September 29th, my comprehensive report was handed over to the German medical authorities and the police. The fake surgeon of Munich was not merely a case of medical malpractice. It was a chilling example of professional identity theft and dangerous deception, operating in the most vulnerable of environments. The motive was clear: financial gain, built upon the exploitation of trust and the grave endangerment of human lives. The pristine facade of the Edelweiss Clinic had concealed a dark secret, where aspiration turned into fraud and the promise of healing morphed into a pattern of silent harm. The beautiful Bavarian autumn, once full of vibrancy, now carried the heavy weight of a profound betrayal, a stark reminder that even in the most ordered societies, the wolves could wear the finest sheep's clothing. The unraveling of the fake surgeon of Munich revealed a truth far more disturbing than a simple error, a silent crime of immense consequence.